Okay.
Well, Troy, here we are. This is the first broadcast that Troy and I are making to our audience, principally to introduce ourselves to you and then get into the thick of it. This one is going to be about how Troy and I met, and we'll limit it to under an hour. But you have the liberty, of course, of leaving anytime you want, but we know where you live, right? So we'll chase you down. Anyway, I'm Danny Teal, and this is Troy Sadkowsky. He can introduce himself.
Hello, everybody.
I'm the CEO of what is it, Troy? Datalogical Services.
Mhm.
And Troy is the CTO, Chief Technical Officer. And we're going to tell you about how we first met. And I think in order to do that, it's better to let Troy start it off because he's much more adept at this kind of storytelling. And I'll just butt in from time to time and add something if I can.
Mhm.
Troy, you ready?
Okay. Yeah.
Take it away.
So yeah, I guess, to jump straight into it, it's like I met Danny. We kind of crossed paths in, I think it was must have
5
been,
years ago.
Yeah, 2015 was 16. Yeah, and then I was involved with getting. I was actually developing more and more interest in a country called Bhutan, and that was because I just happened to come across a Bhutanese one day who told me about the way that they measured the well-being of their nation. And as a data scientist, that really fascinated me because what he said was they, as a nation, measure happiness. And how someone could, view happiness at an aggregate level, at a community or at a national level, really fascinated me. So that's why I developed this real curiosity and interest in learning more about Bhutan. And I went there and scoped it out. Twice before this conference that Danny and I crossed paths on, and this was the International Conference for Gross National Happiness, and the GNH.
You better just explain that to people, what it means.
Gross National Happiness, and the acronym GNH is what Bhutan uses to measure. Well, they proposed to measure the well-being of the nation as a more holistic approach than GDP, which if you cut down all the trees and sold them in the GDP model, you'd actually increase your GDP, but it doesn't do the nation or the land in terms of sustainable development any good. So Bhutan, led by the king and the fourth king, who actually promoted the first mention of gross national happiness back in the 70s, have been on this path to take on a more holistic approach to measuring well-being, and a more sustainable approach that they see is required in some of the existing and mainstream methods. So the International Gross National Happiness Conference was scheduled, and I went along, and I was delighted actually to meet someone like Danny, because there weren't many people like Danny. There was a lot of academics there, a lot of course, the Bhutanese kind of leaders in this field. And
any happy people? Were there any happy people there?
Well, there was an essence, and this is what drove me to, continue my pursuit around Bhutan, is that I felt that they were onto something. And I think actually, and after spending a bit of time being absorbed into that environment or immersing myself into that environment, realize that actually the theoretical or that there's two sides to it. One is that people believe that happiness is important. And then the second side is that, showing a level of happiness and recording that this is, I am happy or we are happy. And the more you move to that side of trying to measure happiness, the further away people were getting from true happiness. And actually, I met some of the people in Bhutan whose job it was to kind of measure or to come up with ideas on measuring happiness and how to do it, were quite stressed about it. And, said, and this isn't one way or another, making them happy. It was kind of, doing the opposite thing. And there is that aspect in the businesses where for them to actually approve or get approved as a project, they have to go through a checklist, a screening test to make sure it's G&H compliant. And these extra rules and regulations in some aspects cause more problem than benefit.
Solved.
Yeah. But one important thing is when the fourth king came up with the notion of gross national happiness, because he was crowned quite young and had this creative and critical thinking approach, that when he was asked about, how do you consider increasing, and I'm paraphrasing here, but it was something like, how do you consider increasing the GDP of your nation? And he openly said, well, I'd be more interested in measuring happiness at a gross national level. And he said those words, gross national happiness. And then for the first 20 years, it just, everybody was, saying, well, that's great. We agree, outside and inside the nation. And in the nation, the kingdom of Bhutan, it just sat in the hearts and the minds of the people. They didn't measure it, they just believed in it. And it wasn't until the last 20 to 30 years now that other countries have come to Bhutan and said, well, we believe that too. How do we measure happiness? And then they've had to put a kind of workforce on it, a strategic team in Bhutan to say, we better figure out how we actually do it. But the more that they try to work out, the rules around it, the further away they're getting from, I believe, the fourth king's vision of what it's all about, which really should, I think, and does well in sitting just in your heart and in your mind and in your everyday consciousness of how you go about being an individual. So
with their own definition of what happiness is, which was, if you'll allow me to
Yes.
butt in for a second, that was my dilemma when I was at this conference, because people were talking about happiness, but nobody was defining what happiness is, right?
Mm-hmm,
and I was sitting there thinking, okay, Nietzsche said happiness is the free exercise of power. But I didn't tell anybody that because I felt like I probably would have been drummed out of the country, right, to come up with such a definition. And people were talking about being happy, but nobody was saying, as I mentioned just earlier, what happiness is. And that was my question. If having been a PhD student, if you're going to write a dissertation, you have to write a dissertation. And like I did, which was the relationship between identity and image. And the first thing I had to do was to define those two words. And so here we were. I agree with you. It was a very inspiring moment, to be there. I think everybody's head was just full of ideas. And what I noticed, I suppose because of who I am, was this was very poorly organized.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, it was kind of like spur of the moment. That's the way it seemed. And the organizer was outside of the tent throwing up because of stress and things like this. And I walked up to him and I said, you know, maybe I can help you, because if you're going to be uh, advertising or pushing this concept internationally, there's some things about organizing how you get in touch with people that might help you.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm the kind of guy, and I did do that when I got to shake hands and have a short conversation with the king. I gave him a business card, you know, and I think maybe I did that with the Dalai Lama too. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
thinking I'm the only guy who does that. Okay, well, you know, but I wanted to help and I wanted to
Yeah.
say, get in touch with me.
Yeah.
And I'll do what I can to bring your level of awareness up about what kinds of things you're going to encounter in promoting global happiness, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And I think that that whole aspect of organizational development, right, was missing to the point that, and I just want to make this one other point, it's a very unsophisticated country
Mm-hmm.
to a large degree. Now that's my perception, of course, because they're very sophisticated in different areas. But when it comes to promoting something like this internationally,
Mm-hmm.
um, there were some things that were lacking, and I
Definitely.
thought maybe I could help.
Yeah, I think, and that's the essence, I think, as well, is that, well, Bhutan is a developing country, and, they do well, I believe, with the resources they have. And yeah, some of the aspects of to compare them with the, other countries like Australia and the US, and how things would, be so different if it was run in, one of these more developed countries. You would see a lot of differences. And I think they know that as well, and that's what I think, is kind of in some ways working against them, to be able to run a conference like that and really be happy and enjoy it and live, their motto, is still something that I believe it wasn't present in that conference as a standout, but is what they're looking to work towards. And yeah, opening their doors to get people to come in, and I believe that's what it was partly about, but probably could have been emphasized more about collaborating with people outside. And that's why I was so delighted to see you, Danny, someone who wasn't in this kind of the same old kind of group of people that
Oh,
would
you
sit
mean
around.
Lala?
Well, it's just people get into these cultures, and until you get someone coming into it from a different perspective, you don't even realize you're kind of in this environment, and it's comfortable for everybody. I'm not saying anything's wrong with it, but yeah, in that spaces like academia and governmental positions and things like that. But yeah, having you with your kind of Hollywood background, your business ethic, your actionable drive to actually make things happen, this was really refreshing. And that's why I had to come up and approach you. And not to mention that you were talking about technology, Bitcoin and
Oops.
blockchain, and
And
how
cryptocurrency.
and cryptocurrency, how it could be integrated into something like a philosophy on gross national happiness to keep the globe moving towards a more sustainable development model that does consider aspects of individual well-being and community well-being and national well-being and global well-being.
You know, I think, Troy, one of the impressions that I got was, which is no surprise and certainly not a condemnation, was that in a situation like that, developing countries, of which you and I have been to a few, you get involved in self-interest, right? And if you're very local, shall I say, and then you see it or imagine an opportunity that could come from people from the outside who are talking about cryptocurrency or who are talking about technological advance and so on, those kinds of advantages. Well, then, you start dreaming. You start saying from the position that you or them are at. And then you start, shall I say, negotiating from that point. You ply your advantages to them, and you expect them in a certain way to respond the way that they're used to being responded to, right? From locals. They're all hanging out with the royal family, and everybody knows them, and these sophisticated priests and pushing Buddhism, and so it's a nice, neat little nest. And then you have a cowbird come and lay an egg in your nest, and you end up nourishing and nurturing the egg until it hatches, and then that bird kicks all your children out of the nest. I think really, in some ways, that would be a good comparison, the way I saw it anyway. And I think they're quickly offended by, you want to talk about cross-cultural issues, right? And interpretation and things like that. And even though the concept itself held very high merit with me and with you, which was why I was there, flying into Paro was like worth it. It's like taking, a camel across the desert in some ways, and then showing up at an oasis. And it was a wonderful. And I would say that the first time I went to Bhutan, which was that time, I was deeply impressed and had nothing really to compare it to. Yes. Which made me open to everything. And I didn't go with any designs at all, because I read about it in some paper, I think in Oslo, in the airport. And it was like, wow, this is interesting. And decided, okay, let's push it. And I thought, okay, that's why I gave the king my business card. It was principally, let me help you, because this is something that's probably way out of your reach, whether you realize it or not. And I'm not some international company, but I've worked with international companies and started a couple. And it's like, maybe I could be like an advisor. I didn't say, for $500 an hour, Mr. King, this is what we're going to do. It was just showing, a very high level of interest in what they were doing and how it could be marketed to be successful, on the world stage. And then the virtues that they're promoting, whether it's Buddhist or whether it's, Bhutanese or whatever. It's a very complicated society with their own folklore, their own mythology, their own relationships. It was something that interested me, in as much as theater interests me. And then if it wouldn't be for my agent and my manager, I wouldn't have anything at all, because I do it for free. And that was the kind of approach that I had taken with them. I didn't say anything about sponsoring this or sponsoring that.
Exactly.
And they had a room full of people and email addresses. I'm looking at it, it's like, Mamma mia, you're in touch with a lot of people who took trouble to go there, right? And they're out of interest. So it's like, you've got a pond full of fish and all you need is a net. They didn't have a net.
Yeah, I mean, and even, as time has developed, I mean, they haven't seemed to, pursued or made much progress. It's still, is there, it's talked about on the side, and it's a good idea. But I think, it is being picked up as a concept outside of Bhutan, with, the UAE and even New Zealand talking about ministries of happiness. But I think what Bhutan is really kind of, I don't know whether they're purposely doing it or it's just something that they do, is like flying kind of under the radar. They don't take the podium and stand up and say, you know, this is something that you need, but they kind of just say, you know, this is what we're doing. And you know, they have that style of being famous for being ordinary. And you know, they are so ordinary in their own way, uniquely ordinary. I don't know if this is, yeah, contradicting in terms, but they have this you know, trait about not seeing, you know, themselves in a way that they, I don't know, can, you know, promote this as something that works because they're still just trying it out themselves. But at the same time, it yeah, they're doing what they can with the resources they have. And yeah, being open to people to come in and suggest, you know, or to get new ideas, and but they're not in a hurry, and they don't, you know, move quickly.
I think that this was a very, and still is, a very deeply personal thing to them as a nation, as a people, as a culture.
Mm-hmm.
I think in a lot of ways, they had, and I believe still do, see the king, even though it's a democracy, I think constitutional monarchy and with the democracy, and
Mm-hmm.
wanted all the benefits to go to the father, like a little like Russia and the Tsar, right? It's like, well, he's the father of a nation. And so the concept, except for a few business people, was that if it benefits the country, you know, and the world, good for us, you know,
Mm-hmm.
that's great. We look forward to seeing more happy people, you know, bless you, and so on and so on. It became, well, it's part of the nation, along with the costumes, the traditions, right?
Mm-hmm.
The way they speak about it, their lack of desire for comfort, for instance, right? And their desire for simplicity. And I
Mm-hmm.
think what happened was maybe, and I realize this now in hindsight, is they were frightened by the commercialization
Right.
of this. And even though they wanted money, they were more than happy to accept it without promoting anything about, you know, about what the balance sheet is going to say, how do I get my money back? It
Mm-hmm.
was just basically, if you're going to a dzong or a special Buddhist temple or something, you give money, nobody accounts for it, you know, very, very primitive in a way. And when they asked me a question about something, it was about cordyceps, you know, the magic worm that they have, which is this I believe it's a fungus that takes over these caterpillars high in the mountains, and it gives you certain advanced abilities at that height, breathing and so on. I know I tried it and actually experienced a difference. And it's supposed to make Chinese athletes, you know, super powerful or whatever. And there were a lot of folk there, and I use that word purposefully, that did not even think about how much it cost me to fly there, you know, spend a night in Thailand,
Mm-hmm.
and then fly there again, and all of the expenses never crossed their mind, not anything.
Mm-hmm.
But they were well equipped to give you the shirt off their back, right? But to get involved commercially was another subject, except for a rare few, which I was treated too. But there was something that they wanted in exchange.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just take a minute to say it was marketing these cordyceps in the United States. And I said, sure, I'll be happy to. You know, you showed me a good time. I'll show you. And I got on the phone, did my research back here in the US, and reported to them that they grow cordyceps not in caterpillars in the Himalayas, but they grow it on brown rice hulls in a laboratory in Hawaii. And that way, they are meeting the Food and Drug Administration's requirements for marketing products like that in the United States. And I got back and I said to them, well, my research tells me that what I just told you and the price of cordyceps here, which they only allow that in the United States unless you're going to smuggle some in.
Mm-hmm.
And principally it goes for like, I don't know, 100 tablets for like $5. And you usually, you know, you can't buy one of these caterpillars that's all dried up and in a package for less than like $15 or $25 a piece, depending on the size.
Mm-hmm.
And the response that they said to me principally was, my mother was right about you Americans. And it's like, what? I don't think I deserve that, but they were obviously surprised.
Mm-hmm.
And then when these same people got back to me later on about cryptocurrency, my response was Google it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. So we run into these kinds of difficulties in this cross-cultural communication.
Yeah.
That disallow things like, you know, G&H to take off. And you and I were victims. I think you're still a victim. Me, I kind of got over it, even though, you know, I have a financial mandate for doing whatever I want in Bhutan, which you know about. It's like, well, what can I do? I even approached, you know, the Trade Commission in Switzerland, and they said, well, you know what? We don't do business with Bhutan anymore. And it's like, oh, geez, you know, somebody that Switzerland doesn't do business with, that must be number one on the list and the only one on the list or something like that. But you went in, you dove right in, nosedived right into the culture, set up a company, have a picture of you shaking hands with the king again in your office. Tell us a little bit about that, Troy. That's a very interesting story.
Well, I think, you know, from my side, it's really about the applications of what we have in what my industry is technology and data. So at that time, you know, I'd reached a point in my career where I could work from anywhere in the world as long as I had internet and a laptop.
Digital nomad, right?
Yeah. And so, yeah, I explored, moving to Bhutan and working from there, and did pursue an active role in kind of doing something in Bhutan, but it didn't really develop. And I think, this approach of being kind of too marketing or like what they're commercialization.
Doing business.
Well, yeah, it's still quite, I don't know, the cultural differences are so large that, you know, it's very difficult to make things happen, where I think part of that was the problem. I think, you know, it's happening, you know, I can see it with the Fifth King's last presentation. He makes a presentation every year. I think it's on the 18th of December. They call it National Day. And yeah, for the last couple of, when the King's addressed everybody, has mentioned the need for adoption of new technology and, the application.
Especially if you're situated between India and China.
That's right.
And
I mean,
it's a highly sensitive, independent country that would be a wonderful place, you know, neutral, to establish, I don't know, a kind of a global, consulate, you know, in Bhutan.
Sure.
Like Switzerland, you know, it'd be like the Switzerland of Asia we talked about, where we could just, if we had Swiss help, and which, you know, I got pretty far into that. And I think it's still possible, but not when, you know, you have primarily a Buddhist country that doesn't want to do business with the United Arab Emirates, which has a Ministry of Happiness. And I made that contact. I know the person in charge, and it was like, let's work together. All of us work together. And it was like with Muslims. And it was like, I don't think I heard them say with Buddhists. It's like, we're people, right? And we're after the same objective. We're talking about not cash, and money and exploitation of resources and enslaving your people. We're talking about an exchange of ideas. And it became, in my long experience, I think yours is longer than mine, of how you deal with a situation like that without getting so frustrated that you give it up.
Sure.
How did you survive, Troy?
So
how are you surviving?
I mean, it's in the aspect of just taking a step back from trying to push and just, doing your own thing or getting on with the job of what I'm doing. And data science and the applications in healthcare and, agriculture that I'm working with my brother's vertical garden business. And just doing, those aspects and being present as well. I mean, hanging around Bhutan, of course, with COVID-19, the travel hasn't been as frequently available, going back and forth to Bhutan and or anywhere in the world. But, we have, been there since 2013, I think, was the first year I visited. Or no, 2014 was the year I first visited. I met I first came across and the interest of Bhutan in 2013. But I think just letting it do its own thing. And being involved when they come and start saying, hey, can you help out? Rather than me kind of being up there and saying, look, I can help you guys. You do it this way. Look, you're doing that all wrong. Try and do it this way. But that approach didn't work where it's still taking time, but I believe the time will be right when they say, actually, we need something that can fill this gap. And who's available? Oh, Troy is here. It's kind of an aspect of being convenient. So they will go with the convenience of a company that's kind of, been around and understands and learnt these lessons of cultural, differences and interchange.
I thought you said Houdini. Did you say Houdini?
I didn't say Houdini.
You may as well have said Houdini.
By getting out.
Yeah. Whew. I've been around you and been with you for long enough to see in all of the ways in which you have to learn to dance, right?
Sure.
And people's perceptions of how they're going to benefit from something that you're doing without being paid for it, right? It's like, well, you're here, you must be, it's like me, you're an American, you must be super wealthy. It's like, well, that depends on how you define wealth, right?
Yeah.
So it's a real circus, I would say, principally. Well, but it hasn't affected my ideas. It's fed them to a certain extent because you and I, have dealt with in depth, I might say, with people around the world. I have a rather notorious person in Belgium who said, all you need to do is to have a letter from the king that says, I support cryptocurrency, and we'll have the first nation in the world. I think that's taken now by a South American country, where we have a legitimate, state-sponsored cryptocurrency, which is what I had in mind when I first went there, because I was hot on the idea, which I think, except for you, was rejected wholeheartedly, because I think a lot of people were running away from the idea that it takes grease, for the wheels to turn. But I had people, who had incredible connections. It's happened in Luxembourg the same way. You know,
Yeah.
we'll fund it, we'll do everything. We want to give to Bhutan because we like the idea, again, promoting this whole happiness aspect and the kinds of things that they symbolized and their neutrality and sustainability, and the list goes on of these people. And it just, and as I mentioned, you know, the Emirates as well, and just people everywhere. But I think to a certain extent, which I believe was recorded in a letter that you received from was Royal Monetary Authority in Bhutan, that principally said, which had its own merits, about the use of electricity, which is why everybody was really interested, because that's one of the sources of these glacial lakes and hydroelectric power. And if you're going to be mining Bitcoins and things like that, well, that's exactly what you need. And I think they had their pants scared off of them by what it could mean to the future of their youth. You know, that they're all going to be sitting at a computer with, you know, Coca-Cola bottle glasses, trying to figure out mathematical formulas or something so they can get rich by what, doing nothing. At least that's my take on it. And, you know, I have a way of speaking about it to sort of make it humorous or satirical in some ways. But, you know, it launched us on our path. You and I met there, which was very interesting. And we've been together since. We started this business, Datalogical Services. I think you had datascientist.com beforehand. You have a group on LinkedIn that we're trying to offer, whether we're not trying to, we're actually offering them the opportunity to join our craft union of data scientists, which is also an amalgamation of talented people, not just scientists, but engineers. I mean, you've said before that involving everybody, because I don't mean to misquote you, that data science can apply to anything. And I understand that data is now a new form of matter. So I read. So it seems to me that it's rather important in that respect, right?
Definitely. Yeah. So
the organization we're forming.
That's right. So yeah, from our beginnings back in Bhutan and, you know, to where we are right now, to actually build on top of, you know, the things that we've been putting together. And from that is this, actually a quite sizable group of over 100,000 people have come to my LinkedIn group that's called Data Scientists. And, you know, what we're looking to do together, Danny and I, is to really make it into something more than just a social media group on a big tech platform, and talk about the concepts like we're talking about now around happiness and sustainable global development, and give people an opportunity to really interact and use technology in a way that is beneficial or, you know, positive. There's a lot of you know, evidence and talk about the negativity of big tech, and I think it's something that is real and needs to be considered. That, you know, the social media platforms that are out are restricting and also addictive and you know, manipulative, and
Purposefully.
So these negative aspects are coming out more and more. But if we can work together to openly share and discuss ideas on
and cooperate and collaborate, right, to help each other.
Exactly. Yeah, to ensure, like Bhutan is, you know, proposing an aspect of a new philosophy around measuring the well-being of a nation. We come up with our own philosophies and approaches and ideas of how to use data and technology in a way that it doesn't, you know, corrupt itself, And I think this is the concern also with coming out of Bhutan, is that they have this fear that, they're going down a path that will be corrupted, or, in a way overthrown by these negative
By technology,
aspects.
right?
Well, I think, technology should be neutral. And when people think of technology, this is what my role and drive is around the data scientist, is to ensure that people have a neutral feeling about technology. Right now, big tech in what they're doing with that, even those two words, big tech, people fear and, get a sense of uneasiness of what they're doing. So I think that is damaging the essence of what I do as a data scientist. I just want people to say, well, okay, what technology is out there and how can I use it, without the fear and, uneasiness of thinking that it could be really misused and taken the wrong way. And Bhutan as a nation, experienced that, just as everybody, a lot of people in the world do already as well, have these hang-ups around, things going the wrong way. And the data scientist, I believe, is here to support and to overcome that, so that no matter how far down the wrong path it goes, we can always kind of turn back. And having someone or having the skills yourself to understand these core components of how things work, or being a part of a community where you can trust and rely on someone to tell you, openly and honestly, that not have to rly on whether it's mainstream media or a YouTube post, but, come together and say, well, is this true? Or, what can I do about this? Or, how should we move forward? Or, having that next door, that guy in the next, work booth, that you can just say, well, how does this, plan out if I use this new technology, or, something's not going right, and saying, can you fix this, or help me out here?
Yeah. I was reading an article before this show we're putting together started, and it was by people, Google, Facebook, Microsoft, and who am I missing? Well, anyway, Twitter and somebody, Instagram.
Yeah.
And I seem to be missing one somewhere. I don't think LinkedIn was in there. But they were said that they had been hired by people to actually make social media addictive.
Mm-hmm.
You said something about that earlier,
Mm-hmm.
where people can't do without it, like smoking or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And self-worth, and it goes much deeper. And somebody asked him, what's the solution? And he said, don't use it.
Mm-hmm.
And, I know personally, because this past week, I was without internet, without telephone, because we had a hurricane come through here, and I lost all connections. And I was in shock. It was like, what do I do now?
Mm-hmm.
But I know from my experience in watching television, which I don't anymore, but I don't know if the internet's any better or any worse. It's just like, I feel like I'm doing something, but most of the time I'm not doing anything. The time that I spend, checking the news, which is more and more biased, it's not the way that most of us would like for it to be, or checking my email for the 200th time today. I'm thinking, how much time do I waste? And they send me a report telling me how much time I spent on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, am I proud of that? Is that still within an acceptable range? And so, I live where I live part of the year, principally so I can actually build stuff, you know, and do things with my hands and my body, and realize that, you know, I'm turning into a dumpling sitting at a computer, you know, eating, drinking, or whatever, and get up to go to the bathroom and rush back just in case I missed a, you know, a news bulletin or something. It's insane. And you know, even though it's somewhat of a blessing, I feel to a large extent it's like we're building a Tower of Babel, you know, trying to get somewhere imaginary, where all these billionaires are rushing to beat each other of being the first one in space. And it's like, what does that have to do with me? What am I supposed to emulate that? That I don't know, what'd you do? Spend $1 billion to, I don't even think he actually got into space, but you know, whatever the difference is. And then, you know, came back, and it's like, you're not Neil Armstrong, dude. You may think you are, right? Or somehow or another, it's going to change your perspective and the way you use technology in order to what, guide us or enslave us, or get our, I don't know, like, you know, on your social media platform, so that you end up with what, 7 billion likes. And then what are you? Who are you? Does that change anything? These are big social issues, Troy. And you know, you're at the base of all of that. You see it from the ground up. What kind of assessment do you make? What's happening to our planet, Troy? Help us.
Well, I think, you know, it's a shame if we don't use the technology. If the answer is to turn it off and don't use it, then I believe it's, you know, an opportunity missed. I think we can get to a point where we can use the technology in a way that, you know, supports a sustainable development model. And that really is,
you mean it can be applied in a different way?
That's right. I think, well, yeah, I believe it starts individual, like you were saying, for yourself, to kind of have this wake up call of, you know, how much time you spent on the computer. And if that's an issue, you know, do something about it. But having that knowledge and knowing that, you know, yes, this is what I'm doing, but it is ultimately making me, you know, happy, or you know, it's what I want to actually do with my life, then it shouldn't be removed or, you know, controlled by anybody. And we, as an individual,
tell that to Zuckerberg, right?
Yeah, I think, well, I mean, as an example, that, okay, why people come to Facebook, and, you know, the addiction side in terms of connecting with others. So this is where, in some ways, data science can help, is that, you know, analyze the situation. If you're addicted to going and checking Facebook, figure out why it is that you're, you know, addicted. And if it's for that connection or connectivity with others, then, you know, you can establish that outside of Facebook. And, you know, every time that you go to check your Facebook, do the thing that you want to do. Perhaps, you know, call a friend. And it's the same technology. They have a phone, you have a phone, and you're using the technology in a purposeful way to get that connection, if that's what you are using Facebook for. So through a data science analysis, we can identify what it is that, you know, is driving you to do that, you know, action. And then you can decide, well, I'm fine with that. Actually, it is helpful because, you know, I'm building my company, promoting my presence, and, you know, it sustains me in terms of, you know, the number of likes I get, the more, you know, cash flow perhaps that comes in, more marketing power. So it's all okay, fine, until you as an individual say, I want to make a change. And with making an informed decision, this is what, you know, data science can help with, is to have an external perspective and present the information. And like you said, as a simple case, how many hours you're spending on the computer. But, it can go a step further and ask you, what does that mean to you? Is that a problem, or is that okay? What does that result in? Does it result in wasted time, or does it result in highly productive time? And
I fear that most people, when they want to know what to do about that kind of a situation, and this is kind of funny, would Google it.
Sure.
Right. And look for an answer from them. My friends in the university principally say that they don't give tests anymore because what kids do when they have to write a paper or something is they just Google it. There's no real interaction. There's no real critical thinking. It's just, well, just get past this so I can go and check my emails again and see what's going on. And the very problem that we're having with that governments are imposing, or health organizations like WHO are suggesting people social distance. Well, through social media, we have social distanced ourselves from each other, right? Using technology to keep us apart, and that seems to me somehow evil, if I may use that word, right? That goes against the grain. I mean, there's, I'm a US citizen, so, we have certain Bill of Rights and principles about freedom of speech, freedom of expression, et cetera, that we founded this nation on. And now we're at a point where big tech, to make a consolidated victimization of who's responsible for ruining my life, it has taken the control of my own life away from me, in that it seems like a big plot looking back on it all. Well, we'll just start with TV, right? And then it ends up being a 1984 or something like that, Big Brother or Big Mother, Big Mama and Big Papa, or whoever they are, that disallow me to do something, and at the same time let everybody know that if you're in violation of your own rights, or whatever rights are, rights can be taken away apparently when they give them, and it's like, okay, well, that didn't work, so we're going to just take them back. And can people do that? Can technology solve that problem for us, Troy? What would you say as a data scientist? Which way to go?
Well,
what to do?
I would say that taking control of your own life is.
How do you do that, though?
Yes.
That's like an admonition, right?
Yep.
They say, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And it's like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
How do I take control of my life?
So I'll give you two examples, two at either ends of extremes. One is to go sit in a cave and meditate for the rest of your life. And the other...
I do that. It's called my living room.
Sure. And then the other is to be a data scientist, to use technology in a way that, and everything that is available to us, and it includes aspects like money, computers, entertainment, all these things that are present in the world, and apply them to yourself in a way that is beneficial. So
it sounds like you're saying, if you can't lick them, join them.
Well, I think we need, as an individual, want to be able to have control over our life, and
would be nice
to use technology in a way that you don't lose control. And this is, well, by making your mental decision whether this is controlling you or not. So if it's Facebook, having the data science experiment to say, I'm spending too much time on Facebook, and I don't want that. I see that as not me controlling my life. So this data science analysis to identify whether or not you are controlling your own life. And this is
that something that I could come to you with and say, pay you to help me analyze? It's almost like psychotherapy in a sense, right? Well, it is psychotherapy. You've got a problem that has a very real base. And you're saying, take control of your life. Okay, it sounds nice. But if I came to you as well as a client or something like that and said, Troy, I got a problem, which is partly psychotherapeutic, partly, I don't know, habit, partly I'm addicted, abusing substances like social media. What would you do? Or what would you say to them? What kind of program would you put them on? Or how can you help them retake their life?
Well,
how do you do that?
Yeah, so the aspect or the process would be, okay, first they've made the realization that they're wanting to make a change. So it starts with the simple gap analysis where you say, this is where you are and this is where you want to get to. So if it's, I'm spending, 6 hours a day on social media, and that's a problem. Maybe it's not.
They're saying to themselves, that's a problem.
That's right.
To that realization.
Exactly. And then they say, well, Troy, I want to decrease that number to 4 or decrease it, by 50%. Then we can use technology to say, well, okay, how much time did you spend today, the day before, and then track it so they can see a progression, a change that motivates them. But at the same time, it's not just the hours that we're talking about, but are they losing out on some area of other joy and happiness that they get in terms of making connected network and feelings? So if they are, then they can replace that with other things that they feel is more important, or they need to, like I was saying, make a phone call.
You make it sound like it's a matter of efficiency, right? If I spend 6 hours, well, I can do it in 4 if I really just apply myself. But you're still doing it. The experience may become more intense, and then you're experiencing stress from having to become more efficient. It sounds like, a maelstrom, like you're caught in a whirlpool.
Well, I think it is. I mean, it's not a start and stop process. It's a continuing, analysis, and it's just, just being aware of what's going on. And data science can present, to some respect, the information that you are interested in knowing.
It sounds to me like, and we've talked about this before, that what you're doing is creating a pathway to a new world, maybe like a virtual world, right? In which the kinds of products that you produce from your imagination become your own personal substitute, rather than feeling like you're a victim or sucked in by some Facebook vacuum cleaner or whatever, and that you're determining for yourself, which means, of course, you either have to be working with somebody who can help you establish that virtual world, or you have to do it yourself. I mean, is that an option? Does that provide a solution of some sort? I don't want this to sound like a commercial, but I'm just really interested in some of the options that I could take if I'm one of these addicts, right?
Well, yeah.
What would I do? What would I do? What would you do?
First of all, can point out that I believe the concepts and the framework that I'm talking about here in data science, existed way before even computers existed. So,
what's that mean?
And that by that I mean absorbing data, which data in the sense of looking at the trees and hearing words in your ears and smelling the flowers. All this is kind of, for me, data that goes into a central processing unit in my brain. And then I can analyze that and work out what to do with that. And then once that has been analyzed, take action. So
you're processing more information. It's like having a lot of connections, and they're all coming to you and saying, well, I know you're having a problem with something. I'd like to offer my opinion. And then you take all of this input from everybody and make your own decision.
That's right. Now I don't have to just be refined with what's in my memory and my knowledge store of what I've understood and how I've grown to where I am today. I can tap into using technology in a way that, can be highly risky to get caught in a path where, you're not benefiting the actual decision you need to make. So if you, I'd like to work this out. So, it's a great question and present it in a way that's more clearer. But being able to use technology to say, okay, what decision do I need to make? I've got all this visual and, audio and textual information coming in, but I'm going to jump on the computer and see what else is available. Okay, now I have enough information to make a decision. I'm going to take action. And then in the past, I couldn't jump on the computer and work out, get some more information. And
you have to go to the library and search the stacks for something you can use.
That's right. So the technology is providing a more efficient way of getting that information to make an informed decision, to take action. But in order to get access to these large amounts of data and these highly sophisticated pieces of technology, it helps to have someone who's interested in those sorts of things, which now is becoming popularly known as a data scientist. So if you want to utilize the massive amount of data and you want to utilize leading edge technology, or even just mainstream technology for some people, like if we jump back to Bhutan, they're just ready to start using and maximizing their Excel spreadsheets. But data scientists can still help in facilitating the usage of data and technology in order to process, or first of all collect, and then process, and then present, so that whoever's looking at it can make an informed decision of what the next action is.
Very, very, very nicely said. I want to tell you 2 reactions I've had, and then I would like to wrap this up, because we're kind of getting into another area that we can manage better next time.
Yep.
Right. But we started, with a happiness conference, and here we are, a million miles away, it seems.
Sure.
But I got the impression that you were using technologies to solve the problem that technology brings. So it's kind of like fighting fire with fire, right?
Well,
that's the idea that came to my mind.
Yeah.
And then the second thing, if I go over just a second, is that I felt like you were offering me, Freud, I think, used the term the talking cure, where if you have a problem, you get together with somebody and you talk through it, right? Which sort of helps you understand what's going on. They may have a little feedback. Well, that's the talking cure. I feel like you're offering the digital cure.
Right.
So it's like you're my data doctor. Are you comfortable with being a data doctor?
Yeah, sure. I think, I mean, data science is like medical sciences. It has its own specialties and, domains. Just like, you get a doctor specializing in eyes or ears or feet or heart. We have data scientists specializing in different fields of expertise and domains, from the physical, makeup of a computer to the programmable, mathematical and statistical aspects of using data, to the presentation layer and the emotional layer that comes when you look at insights and, you know, aha moments. So as well as different domains such as, you know, healthcare, finance, construction, all these different domains that exist. So yeah, liking it to medical science is quite not too far of a stretch in that context. And yeah, I think there was something else I wanted to mention before I got onto that stream, but
that's okay. We can pick up where you left off. I'm sure that this will inspire you to talk more about it. Now you're a thinking man again. But I would like to say to everybody who joined us, and I have the habit of giving Troy the last word, so I'll say my piece and then pass the microphone over to you. Is that this is very interesting for me, and I think actually it may show because all of these questions are very curious in nature, you know, about how to fix things, you know, or how to improve them, or how to market them. You know, these skills that I have and have used and still use are applicable in a number of different areas, like you were saying, data science is. So I think that's one reason why you and I get along so well, is because we have the same mind in a sense that we can talk with each other about all of this. I look at it from one perspective and you look at it from another perspective, but we're in the same boat, you know, talking about things that can help my interpretation of my life in the world, and, you know, you and maybe the same thing for you.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Exactly. Yeah, I think we all have our own, you know, purpose and drive and gifts to, you know, give in the world. And I think, you know, we're all individuals in terms of what we like doing, but, you know, having a mix of complementary skills. And, you know, technology and data I always, you know, promote as something that whoever you are, you know, get involved with and learn what you need to learn. But you don't have to, you know, come to the aspects of the nitty gritty if you don't want to. And because there will be somebody who loves to, you know, cut code and program and build software systems that you can join with and collaborate with if you have a vision and, you know, a creative idea, but still be open to, you know, learning enough to understand the concepts. But and purely in data science industry as well, you know, it's almost impossible for one person to comprehend and cover all aspects of what it means to be a data scientist. So we need to support each other in the different aspects and components of data science. And then it expands out of there with, you know, people in what we call domain experts. You know, they understand their particular domain, whether it's cancer research or, you know, tourism or financial economic drivers. They can do their job, but then be supported by a data scientist, which
That's
essentially
interesting. I'm mesmerized. You know, I was just thinking, and I'm going to close now.
Well,
that go ahead. You have one last comment?
Me, yeah. What I was going to say is, like, we said fire putting out, using fire to fight fire, and, you know, it's like with technology and data, the whole world is on fire. But what the data scientist does is, you know, builds little campfires. So, you know, brings it into where you can walk in between and, you know, utilize these fires, and they're not a problem. So you can roast your marshmallows on them and get the enjoyment of sitting around that campfire and having a chat and you know, telling stories.
It's your Promethean Dionysian close. And besides the fact, what good is fire if you can't control it? Can you imagine what we would do without fire?
Exactly.
So I'd like to thank everybody for joining Troy and me, Troy in his cyborg school, right? And for me, I would like to say the next time we do this, y'all come back now. You hear?
Right. Thanks, Danny.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, everybody. See you next time.